its work. But let's find out more about Mr. Tony Wilson.
When you were introducing me, I was going, why did I say yes?
And once you're here. Right, Tony, so you went to Leeds.
I did.
Bearing in mind you're now a folk singer, bearing in mind that you've been performing and you will come on to the things you're currently working on, but you qualified as an agricultural zoologist. I'm a bit of coal lad, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, well, it just means if a sheep dropped dead in the street, I'd be able to tell you what it died of. I can only say that it's very useful for University Challenge because the most obscure science questions, I usually know them. Okay, so that's about as much use as it ever is.
So an agricultural zoologist from Tyndall.
Yes.
You must have the only CV that has that on it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So Tony, because he's a multi-instrumentalist, aren't you? Where did your love of music come from?
Well, I think, like a lot of people here, my mum and dad had a motorbike and sidecar, and we would go out and it would be like long journeys because it always took about 3 times as long as it does now to get anywhere. And my mum loved musicals, so what she'd do is she'd go and see a musical on the night time, and then the next long journey she would wind up remembering the songs. So it was all things like Pedro the Fisherman and Oh Antonio and My Sweet Little Alice Blue Gown. All of those she would sing. And me and my sister, we would be sitting in the back and would have like requests. So
I'd stop singing, Mother.
Yeah, not at all. And I think like a lot of people who had like 78s, and on a Sunday night that was our treat. We would get to select from I think we had about 20 78s. I love being able to sort of talk about 78s and nobody sort of going, what's one of them? Because recently, what I did was I was a storyteller in schools. And one teacher told me a great story. They were clearing out the loft, and the child had an LP, and the child shouted down, "Mom, what am I supposed to do with this big CD?" so quite like that. So yeah, the standard fare, the home service, when that only had like 6 records.
Tony, this is another cultural reference that because I've been reading a little bit about Tony. Cultural reference that this audience will get.
Yes.
You used to use a ferrograph, reel to reel.
I did. Yeah. I can't believe it. Did you read? Did you read something up?
I did all my research.
Yeah, 5.5 minutes ago. I did. It was like a revelation. I love music and I sang. I was the loud kid at the front of the class. Because I went to Barnes Road and Gilbert Street. I know. I know the Gilbert Street Massive. That's us, yeah. And so I was always noticeable, strangely, for having a loud voice and singing. And I'd be like pushed on stage. And I used to sing at St Mary's in the choir there. And so there I was in the surplice and cassock. So like standing there at the front singing. But when my uncle gave us a photograph reel to reel, then I could actually hear what I sounded like. Yeah. And I used to do things like Jack Jackson on a Saturday morning, and he would do like little clips. So I would record things and then record over the top of that, and just do like little skits, I suppose you would call them. But no, I've always loved singing.
So did you share what you were doing with other people though?
No.
Because now, Tony, you have embraced technology.
Oh, yes.
Tony has YouTube channel and he's recording us now. I haven't seen the feed, but he's recording us now. But you produce your own CDs and films and all manner of stuff. So did you share what you did on your reel-to-reel with anyone?
I think really just to me mum. And she, of course, loved it, as mums are supposed to do.
Yeah.
You know. But one of the things is, I feel very lucky that we've gone through this phase of like technology, where we didn't have a television, so you relied on the radio, all sort of Paul Temple and all of those kind of shows, Journey into Space and Jet Morgan and stuff like this, where you had to listen and you made the pictures inside of your own head. And then we've gone like from CDs to LPs from 78s and that kind of progression, and then television and things like that.
It's lovely to see them all nodding with your voice. Normally they don't know where they are.
Right,
Rolling back the years.
Yeah, oh yeah. But it was more or less a case of, because I could sing, like at school, they would have like singing competitions, inter-school singing competitions, and sometimes I would find myself at about 7 or 8 in like a huge hall singing, and I'm going, how did this happen? You know, but of course at 7 or 8 you don't have the nerves, so you wind up being calm as anything, going, this is just what I do. I will tell you a little story. When I was 11, I went to the grammar school, and I know you can't believe it. I passed the 10 plus, everything. I had like a really high voice and could sing soprano, and this was the first time I ever got embarrassed. I had to sing "Where You Sit," you know. I'm busy. The thing is, like, "Where You Sit," and in front of 1,000 boys, I changed the sit into something else. And I've got to tell you that my street cred went through the ceiling. But from then on, I became sort of quite self-conscious about singing in front of people.
Did you ever do Writing Song Festival?
Probably.
I was because I had a high voice when I was about 12.
Right.
And, I sang in the bleak midwinter.
Yes.
At Writing Song Festival.
Yes.
And it changed my life really.
Yes.
yes. Because I was never invited back.
Can I just say you never could take a hint?
So Tony, when you left school and you decided to go to Leeds to do a degree nobody had heard of, were you already playing folk music then, before you went to Leeds?
Well, again, like a reference which it's lovely that everybody will know, like on the Tonight programme, when there was Julie Felix and Cy Grant, and Robin Hall and Jimmy McGregor, the Spinners as well would be on. There'd be Cliff Mitchellmore going, and well, we've run out of news, so here's Julie Felix. Kind of thing. And there was something about it that kind of struck a chord with me, and we were incredibly lucky because we had a school folk club, a folk club at the grammar school. It started, I think, about 1967, 68. Les Wilkinson started it, but Jimmy Irvin, which I'm sure, he would come and he would like play for us, and it was like a god that just walked in. He played the guitar, the violin, the melodeon, you know, and sang. And the whole point was that folk music to a 15-year-old was great, because you got to sing about things you had no idea about, but sing rude words as well. You know, so, but there was something about folk music that just struck a chord. I mean, I'd done all the singing, you know, all of the classics and things like that, not classical music, but the classics, like you say, In the Bleak Midwinter and stuff like that.
So did you start then composing yourself, or were you just learning all these classics? No.
I think the thing about songwriting is you need, it's a bit like cooking. You know, you need to sort of get used to a recipe from somebody else, and then you can start doing it. I think I wrote something because I got the 5-string banjo when I was 15, I'll tell you another story. Hurrah! What I wanted was, I was obsessed with the Spinners and obsessed with the Dubliners. It was a bit like everybody else was following the Stones or the Beatles, and with like my contemporaries, it was like, do you like the Spinners or do you like the Dubliners? The Dubliners were definitely that hard edge to it, yeah.
My mum didn't like that song. That the song.
What, the Seven Drunken Nights?
The Seven Drunken Nights.
Well, I'm just about to sing it for you now.
Oh, this little light.
Oh yeah, that's it. Oh well, we'll soon find the level. But the thing was, I went to see, my sister took us to go and see the Dubliners live at the City Hall, and there was Luke Kelly, and there was the spotlight coming onto him, and the rim of the banjo was all silver, and it was like he was shining like a beacon across the audience, and I thought, that's the instrument for me. Beverly Hillbillies were sort of big on the telly, and so what I really fancied was a concertina. But on Christmas morning in 1968, and I came down, and there was something that was wrapped up that looked like a frying pan, and not a threatening bit, another cultural reference. Yeah. And I knew I hadn't got a concertina, but I got the 5-string banjo, and it was just the making of me. It kind of like made sense.
Well, why don't we listen to him play at this point? This seems to be a good reference. Now, I know sitting there you have expectation that 50 years on he'll have developed, but he hasn't. So I'm going to stand over there so I'll watch you.
Okay, well, maybe I'll stand up because I'm going to be able to say what it's I'm playing. I won't play it all the way through a song, I'll just play you a little bit of some music. Okay, this is a song that I wrote quite recently, and it's about the people who made all of the train tunnels in the 1830s, and they were treated really badly. So it's quite a strong song about the way that they were treated, but it's written like a lullaby. And the whole point of that is, if you sing something that's quite devastating to a sweet melody, it gives like a bigger impact. It's called My King Sleeps Well Tonight. My king sleeps well in his castle tonight, so brave, so strong, never scared of the fight. With his hammer and chisel, it rings like a bell. For you he came right down to hell. Oh, sleep my bonny Ben. Your king was the best, a king amongst many, and if you're good, we'll save up your pennies and visit his kingdom, so damp and so cold. Your dad would dig for your gold. Oh, sleep my bonny Ben. Now the thing about that song is it's like a lullaby, and it's like about the way that we're treated badly. While I've got this in my hand, the first song that I learned was a song, and I was about 15, and it was Judy Collins that brought out an album, Who Knows Where the Time Goes. And I was absolutely besotted with the way that she sang. But I used to sing this song. Again, I'll only do like a couple of verses. Oh Polly dear, oh Polly, go along with me. Oh Polly dear, oh Polly, go along with me. Before we get married, and she thought to sing. She jumped up behind him, away they go. She jumped up behind him, where did it go? Over the mountain, the valley below. Now the thing about that song that I was singing at 15 was about this man who lures this girl, and then he kills her. So quite a snappy little song. And when you think at 15, I was sweet 15 and still hadn't been kissed. And there I am singing about murder and all of those kind of things. I just like the juxtaposition of it.
Judy Collins there, isn't he?
Yes, I know.
Terrific singer.
Oh, absolutely marvellous.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a story. Love Judy Collins, love that album. And then I was at a festival in Dent, and she was on. And I'm thinking, this is going to be fantastic. I'm going to get to meet Judy Collins. But of course, I was telling stories at the same time as she was on stage. But she did wander around, just tiny, absolutely tiny. And the thing was, I was going, my finger can dance, my finger can dance. And Judy Collins walks past, she looks and goes, my finger can dance all day. So there you go.
So you touched on the storytelling, but we'll come back to that because you're an international storyteller. So you and Boris,
Hang on just a second. What's that over there?
So Tony, you went down Leeds.
Yes.
Did you was it when you were at Leeds that you joined Iona, or was it after you finished?
Who is this person? You've read up? I don't know.
I tried to make it look like I don't do anything, but I made an effort for you.
Well, there was a thriving folk scene, an Irish folk scene in Leeds, because it's that thing of like people when they emigrated away from Ireland, you would find that people would come from a certain county, and so in Leeds there were people who came from Foxford and Mayo, and they were just the loveliest people. They seemed like they were as old as the hills, and probably they were younger than I am now. But I was there, and I had like hair down to here, and I loved Irish music, and I'd be playing alongside these like 68-ish, 70, 80-year-old like players who would keep like the flutes in their suit pocket, and they'd take it out, put it into 3 pieces. And there was a thriving folk scene, but I loved the Irish music. That was the main thing. That was one of the main reasons for going down to Leeds. It wasn't for the agricultural, zoological aspects of it. It was for the fact that there were great music sessions and a great folk club at the university. So that was where I kind of honed me skills.
So when you finished the degree, you then became a full-time professional musician.
Well, you see, what happened was I'd started playing at the folk club, and then I joined up with the John Doonan and Cayley band. Yeah, from heaven. John Doonan was great. Yeah, he was fabulous.
The Doonan family band.
Yeah. Well, yeah. John Doonan was also known as Piccolo Pete because he used to keep his piccolo inside his. It's like we've written this. And he used to keep it in his inside pocket and would play for Cayley's because that was a way that I'd learned while I was still at university, because I joined when I first went down to Leeds in '72. So I was playing Cayley's with him all over, and I wouldn't tell this story. The thing about John, everybody said he's a marvellous player, and would turn up at the gig for the Cayley, play a couple of tunes at the beginning, and he'd say, "Tony, there's somebody over there I haven't seen for 30 years," and then he'd go off and leave us to do the rest of the Cayley. And he'd be going around glad-handing everybody around the room, and everybody'd say, like, "You'll never be able to play like him." And think it's hard to play the note, like this. But I learned a lot, so like doing that kind of thing, like how to use a PA system. We didn't have microphone stands, so what we'd do is we'd get a table like this one, turn it upside down, and sellotape the microphones to the legs. So we'd be all playing to the legs of this upturned table. So I also joined a folk band at that time called Burnt Pete, because we had to represent, it just gets weirder, we had to represent from the Irish Centre in Leeds, we had to represent Leeds at the Rose of Tralee Festival.
Of course. By
singing Yorkshire songs with this voice. My version of Ilkley Moor Bartat is a wonder. So I got used to the idea of playing music, and at the end, can I just point out I didn't get a very good degree. Okay, if there's a lower than the third, I would have got it. Okay, but I built up my tolerance to alcohol fantastically. So what I did was I had the choice of going on to do a degree for the Yorkshire Water Board, or somebody said, would you like to go to Belgium? So I went to Belgium.
So you're now in Belgium, but when did you do the BBC Leeds folk thing?
Oh,
presented that for you?
That was quite a while later. That was when I'd come back from.
So you started touring the European folk festival.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Tell us about those things.
Interesting. Belgium. I love the country. Love the people. I know it has a great reputation for, in the same ways like we can mock people, it gets mocked. They say like there's a great fish and chip shop, a great chip shop in between France and Germany, and it's called Belgium. So it was there, and I mean this was an eye-opener. The Belgian people knew more about English folk music than most English folk people, so it was very interesting. Huge festivals, lots of touring, but I went from Germany, Belgium, Holland, France, Italy, Switzerland, and travelled around for quite some time. And then I came back and decided to be like a solo singer.
Yeah.
So that was interesting, and it wasn't quite as exciting at first, But
is that because it's a very solitary job, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Gigs and
yeah.
There's nobody to have that beer with at the end of the gig.
Yes, and a lot of the time I used to hitch because I didn't have any money. So I'd hitch. Can you imagine it? You're sort of like, I've got to be in Swindon at 8 o'clock tonight. So I'll start hitching. Well, you've got to add extra time. So I'd get up at 7, be on the ring road in Leeds by 8, and then hope. This is like where you're getting paid money to turn up. And you're relying on hitching to get there.
Did you have to disguise the fact you were carrying a banjo to get anybody to give you that?
Oh! Yo! I don't know what it is about like banjos and the banjo jokes. I've got it, all the, what do you call a car with two banjos in the back? A skip. I know. If you threw a banjo off the top of the Leaning Tower of Pisa and a guitar, which one would hit first? Who cares? I made up a joke, and it's this: why does a banjo player have windscreen wipers on the inside of the car? Because when he's driving. Anyway, right. The number of times when I'm hitching and you're standing there with a guitar and a banjo, and I'd have a bag of clothes with us as well, and somebody would say, do you play music? I feel like saying, no. I'm just carrying them for a friend.
Yeah. And what I do once I get a lift is I reveal I have a machete.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
So you were touring around Europe now, folk playing of the guitar, of the banjo, whatever, or the squeeze box, is all about storytelling, isn't it? Folk music. But you have progressed from being a storyteller through music, solitary, to actually telling stories.
That's right.
But stories from the world,
yes.
The collection of stories, and that took you to South America, didn't it?
A lot of places in South America. So I travelled with my wife, so I went to like Chile and Colombia and Uruguay, Mexico, Argentina, there's Ecuador, there's quite a few. Yeah.
So, Tony, do you do it in Spanish when you do your story?
No, these are schools that are English-speaking schools. So if you imagine, like the equivalent of, say, like Eton, but with very young children, right up to 18-year-olds. But fabulous buildings, and what an experience. I'll tell you about how this happened. I'll tell you a bit of the story. I'd done all these things. I'd brought up the children. I stayed at home. I'd I'd been a teacher. I was a teacher at Ridgeway and at Simonside, and I'd lectured at North Tyneside College in like early years development. Agricultural zoology came in incredibly helpful. Mostly because working with very little children is a bit like trying to herd pigeons, but I've got the idea from that. And I kind of got into storytelling through telling stories to my own children and telling stories in school. And what happened was I'd worked for about 2 years. 2 years, yeah, basically for nothing, just to build this up. And then I got a phone call saying, would you like to tour South America? And I thought, this is fantastic. These people have really got my algorithm down, to a T. It's a bit like, do you want to have a bigger mortgage? Like those ones. And I just didn't believe them. And then we were going on a holiday to Cyprus. And I said, they'd phone us afterwards. And then this American phoned me up and said, you haven't replied to us, you haven't sort of said, we could offer you this. And I'm sort of I just went, nobody shouts at me, you sound very angry, I'm not interested. And then the man who ran it, Alberto Alexander, he phoned me up and said, like, take no notice of him, you take your time, ask somebody who's been on the tours with me, and then you can go and say yes or no. So I phoned somebody up and said, it's the best experience ever. So I said yes. So the first tour was in Chile, and that was when the ash cloud came, so 2010. So we were delayed for quite a while. Hard work, no money, but I would not have thought of going to South America and travelling to so many places. And we would have gone for about, shortest was about 3 weeks, but generally about 6 weeks. So you really get to know the place. So.
Tony, you mentioned that you worked as a primary school teacher, which you did in South Tyneside. And most people, when they decide they're going to leave a place, do it quietly or just say bye-bye, goodbye. But as I seem to remember, you did it by having an article in the Sunday Times magazine saying how difficult it was being a teacher at the time.
Okay. I didn't think you were going to ask me that, but well done.
I
hardly ever talk
This is deep research I've done here.
Hang on just a second.
I'll get it for you in a second. Okay, this is quite like an involved story. So I brought up the children. I'd learned what it was like to sort of have to sort of just treat them as well as you possibly can, use the right kind of vocabulary. And I thought, I'm going to learn to become a teacher, which I also did in Leeds. And I was reading. Do you remember A Life in the Day in the back of the Sunday Times? And there was one, and I'm not saying anything against the man, but we were struggling. It was a hard job. It was a hard job then, in 1996. And they had a run of a life in the day of people. One was talking about like how hard it was to find good fletchers for the arrows, so that you could become like an Elizabethan archer for the weekend. And I'm going like, this doesn't relate to me. And then the next week was about restoring embroidered cushions. And I'm going, this has got nothing to do with me. So I wrote an article and wrote it and sent it off. And there was nobody more surprised than me that it was accepted. And it was published in, just saying like, this is what teachers have to do every day, and how difficult it was. And everybody was patting us on the back, everybody saying like, what a great article, really good. And then basically something brown and soft sort of hit the fan, and my whole world turned completely upside down. There were reporters hiding in bushes, people taking photographs, asking the parents what kind of a teacher I was. It was a very low point. Bernard Manning even made a joke about me.
Really?
Yeah. No, yeah. And so I just sort of thought, maybe this isn't the job for me.
And do you know, Tony, it was probably the right choice, not that you weren't a very good teacher, because you were, but that it opened all these other doors.
Yeah.
And allowed you to go around the world and do other things.
Oh, absolutely. It's just at the time, I mean, in retrospect, you can look at it and go, that was a great turning point for me, you know, but also, I mean, I had no money, nowhere to live, so you become very resourceful, you know. So that was quite an interesting time, let's say.
Yeah, it was. But I think it's what is good is that, you know, often people face terrible times and they never recover from it. For you, from me knowing you, it was like a springboard.
Yeah.
It was like shackles were removed. You were able to. I know it was a difficult time for lots of other reasons, but it made you the person you are today.
Well, you were very supportive at the time because you started giving me
Money.
No. Yeah, well, that's all there is to it. No, you involved were going round, and I think you tried everybody else, and you thought, well, we might as well give Tony a try. So we used to go around and do things, yeah, lots of things, and that was an eye-opener.
He worked with me, Bob Stott is what he's referring to.
Yeah.
So it was interesting.
It was a saving grace for me, because that was, but it was great. I mean, I always remember you used to start, if there was somebody sitting in the front row, you'd say, have you come on a motorbike? And then people would go, and follow. And this one woman at Durham University turned around and went, yes.
We used to do, it was the Open University summer schools.
We did.
This time of year we used to do.
Yeah.
We used to have a 10-week residency down at Durham University for all the Open University schools. And you had to be really careful what you said. I mean, now we couldn't do the act now. But then you had to be really careful what you said. And we got a little bit of a warning this particular night when they said it was sociologists and psychologists were, and we went in and there was a lot of people wearing mostly black and looking radical. Yeah. And they said, oh, you're going to have some jolly entertainment from the lads. And it was like, there was a lot of ladies wearing knitted tight, as I recall, and Doc Martens, if you can get the picture in your head. And they weren't going to have a good time. So I went out and I said, and we both, three of us said, it's going to be really difficult because they're expecting me to say, to step over the line, and once you step over the line, you'll be beaten up. So I said, I walked into a bar, and there was this Eskimo, this person of, I don't know what I would have said. So this Scotchman, this Irishman, this African, this Italian, and you could see them all getting ready. And I thought to myself, what an interesting cultural mix. And that sort of broke the ice.
It did.
It broke the ice.
I remember it was a wild night.
It was a wild night in the end. It was a wild night in the end. But we used to sorry, it's your spot and I'm talking.
No.
Can you remember when we got because you used to move us round. Can you remember when the stage was in front of two vending machines? Did you do that one? It's they said, oh, we can't do you there. So we were performing between two things.
And everybody come on. Excuse me.
Can I just get a can of Coke?
Yes, I remember that, yeah.
Okay, I think you should play something else again for us.
Okay.
Do you know, I'll not give you a request, but I love the one, that you play. You know the Ovington Bridge one?
Oh, Ovington Bridge, yeah.
Ovington Bridge.
That's on a different instrument.
It's on a different instrument. It's one of my favourites though.
Yeah.
But I like it because the instrument, this is bizarre, you'll have to look it up on YouTube because you must have it somewhere. The instrument sounds like crossing the bridge.
That's right.
It makes the sound of crossing the bridge and it's always stuck with me. Anyway, there you go. I'm going to move out of his way and let him entertain.
Well, while we're talking about like reminiscing, I'll stand up again so you can see. While we're reminiscing, I was given the job of writing some songs. It was called Home is Where the Heart Is. And it was 11 people who'd been interviewed about living in the northeast. And actually, I was quite surprised this wasn't given. It was by Ray to do. And because I said, okay, I'll write some songs. 11 songs you want, yeah? How long have I got? They said, a fortnight. Far too long. So this is a song about a lad who used to be a bit of a tearaway in the 50s on his motorbike, and now he's got like a disability scooter, and he's still like James Dean, okay? So he's terrorising the general precinct now, and it's got a bit of a chorus. I've still got my tomorrows to remember my yesterdays. Okay? It goes like, still got my tomorrows to remember my yesterdays. Give it a try, give it all. Still got my tomorrows to remember my yesterdays. You've no idea how lonely it is doing this by yourself. I'm the old stencil here, just doing the best I can. But rock and roll was king, I was your man. Remember when on the days. Once I was as strong as my dad's pit pony. Struggle on life's highway, the road's been stony. Still got my tomorrows to remember my yesterdays. I don't want you to feel under any kind of compulsion at all, but Ray has given me all of your addresses, and I will move in next door and sing this through your letterboxes. It's not a lot of words, the door's locked, okay, I know where you live. Still got my tomorrows to remember my yesterdays. I still got my tomorrows to remember my yesterdays. And again. Still got my tomorrows to remember my yesterdays. I know what it is, you don't want somebody from Tank Up in the next door. Elvis and Big Bopper, trouble with the coppers. None was time for the bonuses were better out of trouble. With the tears. First in line to try looking for a laugh. Can't forget the Nettie and the old Tin Man. I still got my tomorrows to remember my yesterday. Last time you go. I still got my tomorrows to remember my yesterday.
So, Tony, you were talking to me earlier, before everybody arrived, you were saying that you're now working on a voiceover. You're doing a voiceover for something.
Yes, for a computer game. It's from a company called Grind Wheel Games. And what I'm doing is I do the voiceovers for this. So it's a platform game. I think it was Ian Johnson brought out books where you would read a bit and it would say, will you go to like the castle, or will you go to the river, or will you go straight ahead to the marketplace, and you had to turn to a page. It's called a choose your own adventure.
Right.
So I have to read all of these things. You are standing in the middle of a castle, and there before you stands someone with only one arm. He looks at you. There is a darkness inside of his heart. And then, next, you'll find like this. So you do it.
So you get a full script and you just work through it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Time and time again, and then they say that's okay. Or
well, I'm just doing it myself. I mean, I can edit.
All right.
What you were saying about technology, I can edit and do those kind of things, and I just send it off. It's amazing these days. You don't have to go to a studio anymore. You know.
So so you're doing that?
Yeah.
You're still touring?
Well, I'd like to say I'm touring after this thing that happened. I call it the thing. I'm not bothered about that because I was walking down King Street and there was a little boy who looked at his mum and said, "Mum, when is this thing going to stop?" And I thought that's a great way of thinking about it. But after that, I stopped storytelling in about 2017 because they had cuts in schools, and I became not too expensive, but just the schools just didn't have the budget for anymore, so everybody cancelled. So overnight, it was like a kind of, what am I going to do kind of thing. And I thought I'll go back and I'll start singing again, because I haven't sung for about 20 years, about as long as I've been doing the storytelling. So I built up a reputation, I built up stamina to sing and play and start writing songs and having a good repertoire, because I'm very fussy. Like if I don't think I'm giving the best performance I can, I'll work on it until I feel happy with what I'm doing.
You must be disappointed quite a bit.
I am, yes, a little bit, yeah. It's a good job I love you. What's that over there? And so it took us about 3 years to feel confident on stage, because strangely, telling stories in front of 500 children was absolutely no problem to me whatsoever. Not the slightest bit of nerves, but standing in front of adults and singing to them. It took us quite a while. And then the thing happened. So everything again got cancelled. So since then I've been working towards trying to get as much as I can.
It's hard to describe to people who aren't performers what that 2 years of hiatus of not being in front of an audience did to performers.
Yes.
Because we were all unnerved by it once we went back on stage. And I remember Tony's a really good supporter of Customs House. He always brings the family to the pantomime, for example. Every performance was electrically charged and an emotional thing for everybody, wasn't it? Yeah. I mean, Tony and I are very emotional, so we both end up crying at the end of things, don't we? And I don't think...
Especially when he's acting.
Yes, yeah. But that stopping doing the thing you love, because it's not just about being in the room playing for yourself. No, it's about how you react as an audience, that feeds back into performers.
I mean, it's like everything. We went out when there was end of the first lockdown, and we went to the Marsden Grotto. We're there in the company of other people. And as you can tell, I'm used to using words and not frightened of talking. But we met this couple, and the only thing I could think of saying to him was "Whereabouts are you from?" And he says, "I'm from Dumfries." And I looked at him and I went, "Oh yes, that's the place where they used to print the Beano, and I've been there, and I remember walking up, and I basically described Dundee to him." And I was like this, and then he said, no, he says, "Dumfries," and I went, and I've been to Dumfries hundreds of times. The marketplace is all curved down, there's the statue of Burns, and all I could think of saying to him was, "I've been there." And I thought, it was then I was kind of thinking, "Oh, I've lost something along the way."
It was an odd time, but we never met as a group. Our friends never met for all that time. It's been sitting on the edge of the table.
All right.
The squeeze box.
Yeah.
When did you learn? How old were you when you learned to play this? How old are you now?
Yeah, hang on. So 64.
You were 64 when you learned to play this?
Yeah.
Wow. So I'm going to be impressed then. And
you know, Ray, from all the things you've said, don't build your hopes.
So, are we going to hear something that you've composed, or something that
I'll play a bit of both.
Right, that's lovely.
Okay.
I love the squeeze box.
Yeah.
Don't destroy it for me.
Right. Yeah. There's a joke that people say. Do you know what you should do if somebody buys your child a concertina or a squeeze box? give them a knife and say, find out what's inside. So I'll play you something now. You should see your faces. There you go. So that's what that sounds like. So I'll play you one of my songs, and this is one of those 11 songs that I had to write. I didn't write them all in a fortnight. I wrote about 10 and a half. So it wasn't too bad. I'm sure the neighbours, well, they loved it because they kept banging on the wall for just one more. This is a song which is called The Alfred Street Girl, which is on one of these CDs. These are, I wanted to have these, if nothing else, take them home and put them in the bin. Okay, so it goes into general rubbish. So so when the Tony Robinson of the future finds them, goes, "He really got about, didn't he?" Yeah. So it's called The Alfred Street Girl, and it's from a woman who lived in Alfred Street when she was younger, and it's about a mother. Through sunshine and laughter, the heartache and rain, so much is lost, but there's so much to gain. Fun tales that were told as the story unfurls. She made our lives richer, the Alfred Street Girl. I do know it. Now the streets have all gone, her footsteps no more. She's more than a memory that just went before. The Alfred Street Girl's tale, a short one to tell, but she lived and she died as the Alfred Street Girl. But she lived and she died as the Alfred Street Girl.
It's your chance. If you've got any questions to ask anybody in the room. Got a question of Tony? Yes?
When you're doing a storytelling in front of all these children, you must have had some great reactions.
Yes, yeah, it is. It's quite funny. What happens is, it's an all-encompassing experience. I also use sign language with the children, and because I was in Glasgow and these kids were knocking the 7 lumps out of each other, and I went, and there was a tree, and all of a sudden we go, "Ooh, a tree," like this, and the king was walking past, and he looked, and he saw, and he smiled, and there upon his head was a crown that was made out of gold, and all of a sudden you've got them all sort of going through. Yeah, you're talking about great reactions. I mean, as soon as I did that, started using sign language with it as well, everything changed. It all became sort of really easy to do. You got the children involved, you got them shouting out at you as well. But you have to learn your craft.
Yeah.
So talking about questions and answers. So the teacher at the end of one session said, with these very little children who've been sitting on the floor looking up, "Has anybody got a question for Mr. Wilson?" This little boy stuck his hand up like this. He says, "I got a question." And I said, "Great, what's your question?" He said, "Why have you got curly hairs in your nose?"
Mr. Houston, you had a question?
Is there anything you'd like to do that you haven't had a chance to do yet in your career?
In my career? Do you know what? So they entertain people. I think I'd like to do something a bit like this, have like an evening with Tony Wilson, where I would sing and I would talk and like tell stories and play songs and things like that. Recently, I've written a song with Tom Kelly about the 7 lads of Jarrow, and whenever I announce it, I go, "Oh, Jarrow, listen to him," because there's no worse than a posh Geordie, is there? Where's he talking, Tiv? That kind of thing. But it's in my mind, it's starting to become like he could narrate and I could write songs that would go with that. You know, so I think I'd really like to do like an evening with Tony Wilson. You know, it might just seem longer before you put that in.
No, I think I know a venue that might be able to facilitate that.
Is it close by?
Yes.
Is it Whitney? Is it Whitney?
Wall's End. So that I'm sure we must talk on to.
Have you written any books?
Well, I've written stories. Yeah, you know, the thing is, like, I mean, everybody like writes, and I did a creative writing course at Northumbria, and because I'd become like an instinctual writer. My first full story, called Gerrard's Road, I just wrote. I mean, I had no formal training. I'm a scientist, but I looked at it like a scientific project. You know, beginning, middle and end, and I just wrote it. And then I wrote another one called The Keeping of the King's Secret and Tommy Fool's Spotty Christmas Eve. And what you find out is it's very difficult to get things published, like in paper form. At that time, this was like 1993. I mean, Kindles went out and things like that. So what I did was I recorded them. So the voiceover is not like a great leap. So I recorded them and made them into CDs, and also like quite a lot of them are on YouTube. So, but it's a quicker and easier way. With schools, I would write 4 stories a day and record them either on audio, like a handheld audio recorder, or I would video them. I mean, now with phones, I can do anything and give them immediately to the schools. I did a lot of that when we were in South America and Korea and China as well, weren't we? So not published as books, but they are available. I've got something like 700.
An autobiography, I haven't thought about anything like that.
A biography. I don't know. You know, it's it doesn't seem like that interesting. You know, when it's yourself. I have written like a kind of a fictionalized autobiography of 10 days in Germany about being in a band. It's called Band with the Runs. But I've got to tell you that the vast majority of it is scatological. You know, it's basically 5 men in a transit van and how much they hate the way each other breathes. They don't tell you about that when you're touring in a band. You know. But thank you for the question. Yeah.
Anybody else in the room looking round?
This is where everybody goes like this.
Tony, that's been fascinating. There'll be loads of people who didn't know that you lived in the town and you do what you do.
Oh yeah.
There'll be. I do seriously recommend you go on YouTube and have a look at it, because you record some in a chair in your house.
Oh yeah.
But you record some in some of the beautiful places.
Oh yeah.
Around South Tyneside, and if you've got people who are from here and live elsewhere, they're lovely, just because you see the coastline or whatever that Tony's recording in. So do go on to YouTube. I'm going to ask you to do one more to say goodbye. And Tony's right. I'm not going to ask you to play this because you haven't heard it yet. No, I'm just going to tell them. Next week we're having an event here called Love South Tyneside. Love South Tyneside will recognise a number of people who make a difference to our lives, people who volunteer to make a difference to our lives. And in my usual manner, I got in touch with Tony and Tom Kelly and said, can you do a song for this event? And they said, oh yes. Was it next year? Is it? No, it's next week. And and you know, you don't think you've ever said no?
No, of course not. For the Christmas house and you. So
I'm not going to ask you to play it now because it's probably still.
Oh, it's still in formation.
In formation. But it'd be nice to have a song to finish with, I think, from Tony Wilson. And thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for
for
asking
sharing your career. And we look forward to your next steps, because you clearly need to learn to play that.
Do you fancy sing along?
Yes!
Okay. You'll know this one. Geordie and Bob Johnson, wine, all set in one bag, in a little board, perhaps gone right before. Well, had you been bananas, from Geordie's foot, or Bob, and roll instead of small. Keep your feet to Geordie, hey, let's be happy through the night. No one may not be so happy through the day. Oh, just that comfort me, still Geordie lad, I am still driving money away. I dreamt there was a dancing town, every clock was there, and I round the wall. And the hell that even the rest of mine was the brown room, which is more than I've ever done before. Let's hear you. Keep your peace and joy, hey, let's be happy through the night. For one may not be so happy through the day. Oh, give us that big comfort, keep your peace till jolly lad, I am driven driving money free away. All the lads shook hands with Carl and Jimmy Green, and I thought he'd come to spoil it with the fun. And I had treated and listened while the big fool's eye, if I slept, it's hard to tell what kind of fun. Keep your feet still, Geordie, hey, let's be happy through the night, for we may not be so happy through the day. Oh, give us that big comfort, keep your feet still, Geordie lad, I am still driving money free away. Drench and greedy left the town, left his love to me, and I thought the house was furnished with a mess. And I had just left the church, Mary by my side, with every feel of being spoiled. Last chance. Keep your feet still, Geordie, hey, let's be happy through the night, for we may not be so happy through the day. Oh, give us that big comfort, keep your feet still, Geordie lad, I am driven driving money dreams away. Thanks so much.
Tony Wilson, ladies and gentlemen, that has been a fantastic morning spent in the company of a very talented person. Thank you very much, Tony. I have to say, one of the joys was looking at non-sun dancers saying, what the hell is he singing about? Final two things. I'm about to go and speak to a writer, Tony, so I'll have to dodge off. Somebody's written a play about netball, and I have to go and see them. It doesn't. I've read the first 15 pages, and it's very funny. Yeah, who would have thought? So I have to go and see them. But thank you very much for being friends. Thanks for being part of us. If one day you wake up and think, oh, it's happened again. No, one day you wake up and think, why don't we go by the river and have breakfast? We're now serving breakfast from 9 o'clock in the morning down by the river, and apparently
it's very good.
It's very good. Anne had her breakfast here. You've had it twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought. And